I'm extremely grateful to have my message go out to you today past my YouTube channel's suppressed views, past Facebook's forced timeouts and vague community guidelines, and despite the best efforts of my censors and government trolls who stalk me across the web and threaten to meet me here today. Speaking of which, are any of you guys here today? Ecoplex, ICA, AF Zimster, Peter Mitch?
Ew! Don't say their names out loud.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I mean, speak up now because, or I will hold your peace. I don't want to hear about how you were laughing at me at the conference later on when you're harassing me and wasting my time when I'm trying to do research. So, and it's too bad you're not here because I actually have some questions and I'm looking to be debunked. And today, up to date, I have not been debunked. The person who can debunk me, I will kiss because they will be giving me my life back. Okay? Yeah. Anyways, so like Amanda has shown us, my questions to my local meteorologist. This is really going to be not easy to. Windows can't open this picture because the file appears to be damaged, corrupted, or is too large. I might not have a slideshow today, ladies and gentlemen, and I apologize. But
we don't mind.
We don't mind. Okay, so this will be a lot easier, actually. All right, well, it is appropriate for me in a full circle life event that this conference is taking place in Virginia Beach. And this is where I came from my hurricane during Katrina. My ex-boyfriend and some other lived here, so this is where we came. And at that time, I knew nothing about chemtrails, contrails, weaponized weather, and when this short one-verse poem popped into my head in the weeks and days after I returned home to New Orleans, I didn't even know what all it would come to mean. Gone. Gone are the days I can listen to the rain falling down outside my window pane and not think that it is an enemy trying to wash us away. Gone. Something happens to you when you see your city as a bowl holding water. Some people recovered maybe a little better than me. Some of my friends never recovered. But little did I know back then how that feeling would prove, how right that feeling would prove to be. So back then, the whole world watched our pitiable neglect unfold on television as if a hurricane in New Orleans had come as a big surprise to official who had not foreseen the disaster scenario, even acting oblivious to where the convention center was at one point during the environmental disaster, while thousands of New Orleanians were left stranded on their roofs days after the storm. The total lack of response, while chaos was allowed to ensue, is shameful enough as it is, and in and of itself. But coupled with the testimony of Captain G, an Army Supply Acquisitions captain I had the incredible good fortune of being able to interview and document in my Chemtrail BTV podcast, it is downright criminal as well. You see, the thing about Captain G's testimony, the thing he couldn't believe or understand himself at the time, was that he was ordered to bring as many body bags to New Orleans as he could find 11 days before Katrina made landfall. And that 8 days prior to Katrina making landfall, he had accumulated 5,226 body bags 115 miles out of New Orleans, Louisiana, NOLA. I didn't find out about Katrina until 3 days before Katrina made landfall. Didn't get out till 2 days after being stranded in the city without services, while my friends were up on the neighbors' roofs for 4 or 5 days after Katrina made landfall, waiting for relief. At the time of his order, Captain G thought there was an intel on an up-and-coming terrorist attack. But when he realized it was for a hurricane that actually happened, he asked how they knew there was going to be one with such certainty. He was given the excuse that they knew because of satellite prediction models gave them 200% accuracy. Though I personally lost no property during the flood, I buried 5 friends to suicide the following year, finding the last one myself. So nothing about the answer takes away my outrage at the lack of response, but only validates the feelings of having had someone try to wash us away. But I wouldn't discover Captain G until years after Katrina, nor did I know the slightest thing about climate engineering at the time, much less the difference between a contrail, a chemtrail, and whatever that funny word geoengineering was. Ironically, I would not wake up to chemtrails for another 5 years until after seeing the most amazing display of chemical hazing out of the skies, coincidentally, I don't believe in coincidences, immediately after just watching What in the World Are They Spraying? There were no chemtrails for 2 months after that. That was my wake-up call. Little did I know that some of the people who helped wake me up would be some of the gatekeepers that would later try to hold me back from exposing the truth themselves. But more on that later. Meanwhile, I had written my children's book, Funny Clouds, A Chemtrail Tale, which earned me special status amongst the government trolls and 7 bad reviews before I sold my first book. Taking on these debunkers, I dove deep into their contrail narrative and discovered why we can argue till the planes fly home and still not be able to get anywhere trying to prove to our beloved family and friends that the taking out of our skies is deliberate. Because the nature of the linguistic game is set up to keep us confused and off point. Contrails, chemtrails, geoengineering, which is the correct term? Well, right off the bat, I'll tell you I've never liked the term geoengineering, even though I sure feel smart saying it. But that's because you can't use climate engineering to fix the problems of climate engineering if you're not honest that climate engineering caused the problem in the first place. Right?
Yeah.
By design, the term geoengineering ends up justifying itself. And so is therefore the worst word to use if you really want to be intellectually honest and technically correct. And if you argue about whether it's a contrail or a chemtrail, a well-gate-kept narrative, as you will soon see, you will miss the point that it is actually indeed both. Yes, both. Surprised? Not all of you. All contrails are chemtrails. After all, that condensation isn't forming on pixie dust, darling. Oh, it's not a chemtrail, it's just water vapor. Oh, really? It's just a contrail. Well, guess what? Contrails matter. It turns out, as NASA says, and I will quote their raw data, not their spin on things, even small changes in the location of an abundance of clouds could change the climate more than the anticipated changes brought about by greenhouse gases, human-produced aerosols, or other factors associated with global change. Even small changes in the location or abundance of clouds could change the climate more than the anticipated changes brought about by greenhouse gases, by other greenhouse gases. Human-produced aerosols or other factors associated with global change. That should be all we need right there to say that the climate change narrative is not complete. So that means that whether or not that cloud condensed on a chemical or pixie dust, the albedo modification of the cloud and the heat reflection and absorption properties of it has tremendous value regardless of what chemical it is nucleated on. Now you change the chemicals and you're adding to the properties, and you're changing the properties even more. But regardless, just the fact that you have a cloud, you are affecting the heat balances in the atmosphere and the environment. But chemtrails means deliberate spraying, and contrails are normal condensation. Some of you may be thinking, so there is a difference. Well, then I ask you, why are we normalizing contrail pollution at any level? Engine exhaust is highly polluting, and whether there is a weaponized agenda or nefarious chemical cocktail piggybacking on that contrail or not is almost irrelevant, because all contrails have health and environmental implications regardless. Some more than others, of course. Now, this is neither hidden nor is it showcased by MSN, mainstream media. We need to stop attacking each other and start paying attention to the monstrous pollution we are letting off the hook. Greater scrutiny and public transparency with the contrail pollution problem would yield greater scrutiny at any other covert program riding and hiding in the coattails of the persistent contrail phenomena. In the meantime, while we've been fighting this chemtrail versus contrail narrative out with our friends and beloved community, few of us realize that they legalized chemtrails for geoengineering purposes last year in April 2017, when Trump signed HB 353 into law with the Weather Forecaster Act of 2017. Taking not only the burden of proving chemtrails exist off of us, but taking the liability off those doing the chemtrailing as well by declaring it legal to do so for national security measures. This, of course, is the bogus logic that attempts to justify the use of the very technology we are exposing here today. A good solution to the chemtrail-contrail problem could be a bill such as Rosalind Peterson's H6011, if I'm not mistaken, written for Rhode Island, which would specifically ban all geoengineering and or environmental modifications that are detrimental to human and environmental health across the board. More info on how to use the platform in your state is available at zerogeoengineering.org or through California gubernatorial candidate Peter Valentino's campaign info. Peter Valentino is running for governor of California on the anti-chemtrail, anti-GMO, anti-mandatory vaccine campaign, and I would strongly suggest you spread the word with all your California friends because we need more people like him. Another reason I don't like wasting too much time on the neuro-linguistic programming game of the contrail versus chemtrail narratives is because, you know what the most prominent greenhouse gas on Earth is?
Methane?
Great guess, because you would be right if you weren't lied to. Because when you Google IPCC greenhouse gas chart, and you look at the image search results, you will find CO2 as the largest portion of the pie. But it's not until you actually add water vapor plus water vapor to your IPCC graph chart, IPCC greenhouse gas chart, that you get water vapor is 80 to 90% of greenhouse gases. This is a scientific fact. It's a scientific fact that CO2 pushers, CO2 deniers, and chemtrail activists all don't really own. And that represents billions of dollars of gatekeeping when three sides of a narrative are clueless onto the most basic scientific fact that water vapor is the most prominent greenhouse gas on Earth. And this is not a throwaway point. They'll say, oh, it's not as important as CO2. Do you actually need CO2? They loop it around. There is a feedback effect. We're not here, so let's see here. Why was so much money spent trying to cover up the significance of water vapor from public scrutiny and debate? Besides, one, to help normalize contrail pollution. It's just water vapor. Just water vapor. Shh, it's okay. Shh. Two, to reduce in the public mind the significance of albedo modification that contrail series was capable of doing. Was there another reason the significance and relevance of water vapor to the greenhouse cycle was being covered up? My podcast, BTV, issued forth yet more witnesses who held the key. One was a former Air Force weather observer who said she observed cloud seeding operations conducted in the 80s to allegedly end drought for farmers, when the reverse was actually true, that it was causing drought. She also testified that she didn't understand any of the new cloud formulas these days because they make no sense, and that the flat bottom cloud bases have disappeared. So she has no idea what the base level of these clouds are like. She used to be able to tell. Also, she says it makes no sense for there to be more moisture at the top of the atmosphere than on the bottom near the ground because there's less air up there, and so there should be, therefore, less moisture capable of being held. Now, the official reason for there being more contrails that persist and linger, according to the literature, is the presence of ice supersaturated regions, which, ISSRs, which mysteriously have become more prevalent in recent years. Allegedly, there are more contrails in the sky because there is more moisture up there, while on the ground it appears to be drying out. Now, this is where it gets a little confusing because contrails have been proven to have a dehydrating effect, but also are capable of helping create ice supersaturated regions, ISSRs, the one condition that is needed in order for all contrails to form and persist. And we've tested this out. We've seen commercial airlines, the not military, doing contrails on days they shouldn't have, but they said, oh, the ISSRs were high, and so therefore they would create a contrail. So that's very convenient. But all you need to do to create ice supersaturated regions is send a fleet of planes up ahead of time to supersaturate the air. It's like this cycle of death. I mean, you guys understand what I'm saying? That the contrails supersaturate the air, they dry it out, they create these supersaturated regions, and then the air is just so thick, of course, everything is billowing out. No matter what other chemicals you really got going on. So all that aside, why we lose in the argument, despite when we know they're spraying us. So, allegedly there are more contrails. Okay, so this term, ISSR, explains all contrail phenomena, according to debunkers, even though the term itself is missing from the NOAA's glossary of meteorological terminology. It's like the center of a big conspiracy that they're trying to wipe out, and they don't mention ISSRs. Why? Again, because they do not want you realizing the significance of water vapor. But is there another source of these ISSRs, maybe? Turns out these ISSRs are a major key, though I would not realize that for a while longer until it slowly dawned on me that there was one person I would mirror in my podcast over and over again, because he was the only person who could actually explain to me where my severe weather came from. That person was Weather War 101. After seeking him out online personally, we came out with a Weather War 101 interview, highly recommended, that made waves just before the 2017 hurricane season got going. As soon as we got some traction on our interview, the gatekeepers came out in full force to try and gatekeep the chemtrail community from realizing that not only should we be looking up, but also we should be looking down at the fact that all these 1,000-year floods were coming out of rapid, synchronized water vapor releases, massive synchronized water vapor releases from wet surface air coolers put out by power plants that are then steered into place by Doppler radar to deliver these waters wherever they are desired and sent. Having self-admittedly formerly worked for power companies 30 years prior, Dane Whittington did his best to debunk his crucial realization Weather War 101 has been able to prove for years, picking straw man arguments and claiming the whole idea was preposterous, despite there are not only being a 2004 patent for cloud seeding via cooling towers, but there being a whole history of desired and inadvertent seeding from cooling towers, ranging from just recently, when admittedly the Pittsburgh plant was caught creating a blizzard hyperlocally, to back in the 60s and 70s when they were studying the meteorological significance of inadvertent weather modification from cooling towers back then. Actually, I have a 1965 document that talks about seeding over cooling towers. It's not a new idea. They were studying it in the 70s, and then they stopped. Officially. Loads of interest is going on in the literature before all of a sudden disappearing and not being seen as relevant to the climate change narrative in any way, but taken all together, it is very relevant. 70% of our energy created is released as heat waste. I heard that, this is an aside and I shouldn't get too much off track, that Carter had a way to close a loop, a nuclear loop, back in the 80s and he turned it down. And back in the day I didn't understand why, now I do. They couldn't infuse the hydrological cycle with this water vapor. I had a video I wanted to show you about NASA showing the anthropogenic effects of sulfur emissions. Well, you can replace sulfur for water vapor because a lot of these factories that are there are releasing water vapor as well. So it has that same undeniable effect. To say that we don't affect our environment is ridiculous. But what was weird about Weather War 101 is that he kept telling me to focus on the power plants while he was schooling me not to worry about Doppler radar so much. This is where I get weary, that he too might be a gatekeeper. I don't know. But because anytime someone tries to keep my attention away from something, I end up wanting to inspect it even closer. Kind of stubborn like that. And so after our interview is when I made the discovery that, in my opinion, is the most vulnerable Achilles heel of the entire climate engineering puzzle. That proves once and for all that our weather is indeed weaponized and our hydrological cycle is hacked. And the discovery is this, that the entire hurricane season of 2017 made landfall with the eye of the storms going directly, think pool table, directly into Doppler radar, without exception. And this trend continued inland for several Dopplers more after making landfall. have the evidence, as crazy as it sounds. It's a matter of historical document. Even if I drop dead right now, you all can pick this up. I was so excited by this discovery, and naturally couldn't wait to hear why Weather War 101 didn't mention this himself, and why under these circumstances he would not acknowledge my discovery. Now, he talked about Doppler steers the storms, but I didn't realize it, like, literally brings it right into it. Irma, Nate, Maria, all went right into Doppler radar. Puerto Rico taken out with one Doppler radar storm. Millions of people displaced. They're not even done committing suicide in that group. That'll be next year. So did Hurricane Harvey, but because it triangulated between these three Doppler radars, it's trickier to prove. But with Harvey, I was given an off-the-record witness in the military who was stationed in Texas at the time, and warned me about the storm before my meteorologist did, because he was given an earlier warning when he was told to pack his bags and be ready to evacuate before it was a tropical depression. I posted that on Facebook and got some attention before the meteorologist did at the time. This is the second source that testified to me about advanced knowledge of the storm, and this second one was able to give me the warning so that I could place the warning out there before my meteorologist as well. After being kicked out to Harvey's, when I made the Doppler and eye of the storm